This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
This week in Off the Record, let's make a deal. In this case, a $56 million deal between CMS and the county. Schools get their money, but what do parents and kids get? Foreclosure at Uptown's epicenter, which is more like empty center right now. Blame it on bad business, or should we blame COVID? Governor Cooper in Uptown urging more COVID vaccines as local COVID deaths drop to zero. But that new variant could be a problem. And UNC's image problem, finally offering tenure at Chapel Hill to a controversial new professor who said thanks, but no thanks. Also, body cam released, a cop fired, and an apology from the officer himself. Goodbye golf course as Ballantyne gets a new park instead, and the mayor hints at when the Panthers might get their new stadium. Lots to talk about this week on PBS Charlotte. From our PBS Charlotte studios in historic Plaza Midwood, I'm Jeff Sonyer, and we're off the record talking about the stories you've been talking about this week. And if you watch the news, read the news, and listen to the news, well, you'll recognize the names and faces around our virtual table. Danielle Shemtub from Axios Charlotte, Dedrick Russell from WBTV, and Mark Becker from WSOC-TV. Thanks for joining us this week. You can also join the conversation at home. Just email your questions and comments to offtherecord@WTVI.org. Well, let's talk first about that deal between the county and CMS. I talked about it being let's make a deal, but it started out as the county's version of truth or consequences. Tell us the truth about how you'll improve the schools or pay the $56 million consequences. Sounds like, Dedrick, the school system won this round at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And in talking to some people with the county commission, they say that that CMS was they were well prepared when they went into this mediation. And keep in mind that going into this mediation, CMS knew that the law was on their side, that the county is supposed to fund education and that the county doesn't necessarily have oversight over how they spend the money and things like that. So a lot of some county leaders said that CMS did have their ducks in a row when they went in there. And the county is saying that, hey, we won too, that we got accountability, we got transparency out of this deal as well. Because if you look at the mediation agreement, that CMS must be more forthcoming, and they will have to have test scores and progress reports on its website. So that's why the county is giving the CMS a little bit more money to update its website so all of that information can be stored on that. And also they are obligated to meet with county commissioners and facilitated meetings so they can outline the plan, outline the goals, so everybody will be on the same page going forward. But the main thing is that will Black students, will they be better in their academics after all is said and done? That's the question that still remains.
Yeah, that was the issue from the very beginning. Is there a plan to improve those schools that have, up till now, been failing, in particular students, minority students?
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
The county.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, Dedrick. The county manager, this is not Charlotte politics as usual, right? When the county manager, Dina Diorio, basically said $56 million we're holding back unless you come up with a very definite and defined plan. And in the end, I think, Jeff, you kind of touched on it, or Dedrick, you kind of touched on it, that everybody got something out of this. It's sort of a win-win, but not without a little bit of political friction, a little bit of political heat. And, so I think both sides can walk away, as you said, saying they got something out of this. And in the end, that should be a good thing. But as, again, Dedrick, you said, it really comes down to the bottom line. And can we do better in the classroom? Can we do better by these students who are, on the margins? And can those students, pick up on this and do better? I mean, that's really what it gets down to.
And it boils down to that when we get to a crisis, this is everybody's responsibility. Right. It's not just the school board, it's not the county, but it's the city, it's the parents, the churches, and things like that. This week I talked to former school board chair Mary McCray, and she wrote a letter to the Black Political Caucus of Charlotte saying that, that we need to be focused on opportunity gaps instead of achievement gaps. She thinks that once we try to close those opportunity gaps, that maybe the achievement gaps will go up. opportunity gaps, like some students in those challenged areas, they don't have good parks to go to. Their parents are either underemployed or unemployed. Healthcare. So she believes that once we start focusing on those opportunity gaps, then the lifestyles and the academics will rise for those students.
Yeah, I thought that one quote from Vilma Leak at the meeting where they approved this deal, County Commissioner Vilma Leak, she said it's time to, start fighting for our children, not worrying so much about money. And that's really what this is all about, all the money in the world. Unless it's used properly, unless it's used effectively, it's not really going to solve the problem that we all really want to solve here. But for now, at least, it looks like we've got a truce in this feud between both sides, and hopefully that truce will result long term in better schools and better performance among our students. Uptown, some problems regarding the epicenter. Again, I called it Empty Center because it really is kind of a ghost town right now. Danielle, is this a COVID problem, a bad business problem, a perfect storm of a lot of problems combined together? What's your take on why Epicenter, which looked so healthy and vibrant just a couple of years ago, now kind of looks dead in the water?
I think it's what you said, a combination of all the factors. Certainly COVID was probably the death knell there. I mean, I think maybe half, the businesses are open now, even over a year later. And of course, there were concerns about crime over the years. And so I think that this has really just kind of come to a head now. Now they're delayed. So basically they're late on this loan payment and essentially headed towards foreclosure. And I think a lot of people are wondering, what is the future of the Epicenter uptown? There's been speculation for years. I mean, I remember even before COVID of, what will happen to the Epicenter? Are we going to, redevelop it? Things like that. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the future holds.
Yeah. And Jeff, and the future has to be right for the Epicenter, because remember that the Epicenter was touted as the place to be, and it was the attraction to bring conventions and other activities there to Charlotte, because before, people complained that there was nothing to do downtown Charlotte. So that's why we're not coming to Charlotte, because there's nothing to do. And so now you build this Epicenter, and it was the place to be. It was the place for millennials to hang out. It was like the swag. We had swag. But now with the Epicenter, future in question, many people are concerned about that. Business leaders are concerned. Politicians are concerned about that, because can you imagine as we open back up, you see an empty, building, an empty space there, and it could be an eyesore. So many people are praying that somebody will come and bring it out of foreclosure and try to, bring some new life to that, so we can continue to have our swag in Charlotte.
Well, a couple of points. Jeff, you and I have been around probably the longest here, and remember City Fair. Uptown many years ago. There was a development essentially trying to do the very same thing. Now, this was long before there were a lot of people living in Uptown Charlotte. And the idea was to attract people uptown for shopping and food and stuff. It did not work. And we thought, okay, well, we've moved ahead. We're, 2 decades later, we've got the Epicenter coming in. There are more people living here. But again, I think the fundamental question is, will people who mostly live in the suburbs get in their car, drive downtown, try to find a place to park, and that's no small feat sometimes, and then, do the Epicenter? Yes, some will get on the light rail, which stops right there. But again, that's not the majority. That's not enough to keep it going. And so I'm not sure that we're ready yet for something completely like that in Uptown. Now, the other factor, and I don't think you can minimize this, is that, the crime factor that came up already here. There was a businessman who was shot just by a fluke thing, 2 kids fighting with each other. One kid shoots and a bullet goes across the street and hits and kills a businessman who was visiting in the middle of the day. And there have been people who suggested that that Uptown location in proximity to the transit center just makes a lot of people feel unsafe. And I don't know that the statistics necessarily bear that out, but that's the perception. And so it's challenged in that regard as well. So there are a lot of things going on here. COVID, the parking situation, the reticence for people to come downtown to eat and enjoy themselves, as opposed to their closer South Park, Valentine, or up on North End. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's tough.
I was looking at the numbers on Epicenter. It's down to 37% occupied right now. That's from 78% in 2019. And 13 restaurants and bars closed during COVID, and they never reopened at the Epicenter. I mean, obviously COVID was tough on every retail and restaurant type business, but the red flag, I think, is what you mentioned, Mark. You've got a lot of folks who live uptown, and if these 13 restaurants and bars can't reopen with, even without the business folks that come in, and out of the offices every day because of COVID, those folks living uptown, you'd think would still be, your customer base. It just makes you wonder, that all seems so new at Epicenter, but is it time to try something different, because uptown has changed so quickly? It's like you said, it's a big donut hole that needs to be improved in order to keep that whole area vibrant, I suppose. Yeah. Talking about COVID. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danielle. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, Uptown has been particularly hit, I think, by the small business, the challenges brought on by COVID to small businesses because of what you were saying, the office workers not returning. And I think it's been interesting to see how companies even now are not necessarily bringing people back 5 days a week. So I think that's going to continue to be an issue in the long term. If you don't have as many office workers there on a given day, what does that mean for those businesses?
Yeah, it might be a right sizing of a lot of businesses uptown as we come back from COVID. We're hearing now about 4-day work weeks to help retain workers who might not want to come back to the office right away.
Right. And keep in mind, the Epicenter was not only built for the people of Charlotte, but it was also built for the visitors, the tourists, the conventions, the people who come for their conventions and activities and things like that. People who will go to the Spectrum Arena and the Convention Center and the NASCAR and things like that. The theme is that when you come to Charlotte for an event or for a convention, you can park your car there at the hotel, and it's a walkable city. You can walk to anywhere. If you want to walk to the movies, walk to the bowling alley, walk to get something to eat, walk to shop. That was the drawing card. So I think that the Epicenter served two purposes: for people who also live downtown, but also more for the people who come and the conventions and things like that. And when the conventions went away during COVID, then that was part of the Epicenter's business. That's
a good point. Yeah, I guess except for the hotels uptown, maybe no businesses would be more directly affected by this drop off in convention business than those Epicenter restaurants that really depended on a lot of that convention business. But we'll see what the next step is for for either the current owners or whoever the future owners might be. Again, the Epicenter is still open. It's just not much. There's not much open to begin with to go down there and visit in the first place right now. The governor was uptown this week as well, again pushing folks towards getting that vaccine because of North Carolina's general record behind other states, and Mecklenburg, pretty much like the rest of the state, we're not really where we need to be right now when it comes to effectively vaccinating the population to resist the virus we know and the virus we don't, that variant that seems to be on the rise right now.
Yeah, he was almost right there at the Epicenter, right? I mean, and we had the mass vaccinations. They rolled them out. We've talked about this. I mean, it was hugely successful, I think, in terms of how it got people in and got people out, got people vaccinated. I went to one of those mass vaccinations. It was impressive. But now we're to the point where around the margins, you're trying to go door to door, literally. In some neighborhoods, you're trying to just offer people the incentives that the state is offering, a couple of $1 million prizes. But boy, it's tough. And the variant is real, and the numbers are going back up marginally, gradually, but they are going back up again. And, I think we do need to be concerned.
Yeah, the deaths in Mecklenburg County from COVID, according to a story that the Ledger did this week, 2 weeks during June, there were no deaths at all in Mecklenburg County due to COVID. That's a milestone in fighting this pandemic. But what we're hearing is that everybody who's getting COVID now and dying from COVID now, those folks, for the most part, are the unvaccinated folks. And with a variant that's out there that threatens to grow, I mean, the folks who don't get the vaccine are the ones at the most risk. I guess they've always been at the most risk, but now the numbers really kind of point to that. And you'd think that would be an incentive for folks who might be reluctant otherwise to go ahead and get the shot.
Well, and it's
I think it's that old, it's not going to happen to me thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead, Danielle.
Go ahead, Danielle.
No, I was just going to say, and it's a more contagious variant too.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the concern from health officials is just how quickly it can spread in unvaccinated populations.
Yeah, and they're still pushing hard, talking about even going to door to door in some of those communities that are really lagging behind. I know, Dedrick, you've done some reporting on that. Any sense of, what's keeping folks from getting the shot?
Things vary. One thing we have heard that it has not been, the vaccine has not fully been vetted.
Right.
It's just an emergency use authorization. So some people want to have more information, more data about how this vaccine will work long term. Some people just say that have religious beliefs that they don't think that that they want to put that vaccine in their bodies. And then some people just think that some people out there say that if I haven't gotten it now, then I probably won't get it. So there are a lot of variables and a lot of what people are thinking, and I think it's an individual thing. Not only is it a race thing, but then you have polls out there that said that Republicans that they're the ones that they're not going to take the vaccine. So that is America. America is diverse. America has different ideas and things like that, and that's the freedom that you can decide what you want to do. But then at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay the price and pay the consequences of the choices you make.
Mark?
Right, but Dedrick, I think too, vaccines aren't new. Vaccines have been required for kids going to school for years. Now, there are always a few who mostly for religious reasons don't do it, but for the most part, people have gotten those vaccines. I had vaccines as a kid all the time. But there's something different here. I mean, we used to just get the vaccine because we were told it's the right thing to do, and you did it, and there you go. But now I think the culture we're in, everybody now has I'm going to make my own decision. Well, yes, you are, but think about the bigger picture. Think about everybody else. We don't think about the collective good, I don't think. Editorial statement here. Maybe as much as we think about ourselves first, the me first generation. And frankly, I think that's unfortunate. I think we do need to think about the bigger picture and how I fit into this and my responsibility. End of speech.
Yeah. And Dedrick, go ahead.
And it is so interesting that with this vaccine, that this is free. You know what I mean? You don't have to pay for this health care. And it's so accessible. It's available at games, at malls, and things like that. And for people to still deny that free health care, it's just amazing to me. And as Mark said, we are in a different time, we're in a different space, and people want to be aware and things like that and take a stance. I get that, but it just seems like with this vaccine that it's just so available that people still deny it.
Yeah, it's as you mentioned, too, it's at both ends of the political spectrum where we're seeing the reluctance there. I don't know how you solve that problem because it's not just one problem. It's a problem that's different depending on who you are. But they keep coming to Charlotte. They keep making statements and having these pop-up clinics. And, I don't know if it'll take another rise in the vaccine in the virus to prompt people. But right now, we're kind of at a plateau, and that's not necessarily a good thing from a health perspective. It's not really in our backyard, but UNC and Chapel Hill had its issues this week with, offering tenure, then not offering tenure, and then offering it again to a professor in the Knight Chair of Race and Journalism. I know that Danielle, you're a former UNC graduate in the journalism school. This is it hits a little bit close for you. You want to talk a little bit about this situation with Nikole Hannah-Jones?
Yeah, so earlier this week, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is a renowned journalist from the New York Times, said that she's not going to take UNC's offer of tenure for this Knight chair position. And instead, she's going to set up a new center at Howard University with Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think that some important context, she, of course, the 10-year decision was postponed. She was instead offered a 5-year contract. All of the previous professors who'd held this role had tenure. So, she basically made this statement saying that she didn't want to, she didn't want to be responsible for fixing the problems at UNC and, wanted to go somewhere that was a space that valued her, essentially. I think that the larger questions, there's so many questions this has raised. I mean, on the one hand, are students of color and faculty of color valued at UNC? Right. I mean, you had the student body president a couple weeks ago come out saying, if you are a student of color, look elsewhere. I mean, that's a pretty big statement to make and pretty dramatic for a lot of people to hear, I think. And you had a renowned chemist who was supposed to come to UNC who ended up turning down the offer because of this situation. So I think there are a lot of questions about whether, the school can retain and recruit diverse candidates and diverse students.
Yeah, and this is a teachable lesson here. People say, go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. And I think that's exactly what Nicole Hannah-Smith, what she did. She's going someplace where she is celebrated and not tolerated. And, and when you look at this, that she's taking money with her, we're talking about 3 organizations and an anonymous donor have now contributed about $20 million to her effort. So that money is going with her to Howard University, where that money could have been right here at UNC Chapel Hill. And in her statement, she is saying that she thinks that the university should apologize to the students who protested on her behalf. She also says that the university should release more information about why she was denied. So I don't think this is going to go away, because I think the students there are going to continue to bring this up. And I just talked to a student who is there, who was a student there, and I guess that there was some an event that happened, when students were protesting the decision, and the officers there, and they think that the officers pushed the students and things like that. So I'm told that there could be another protest to talk about how students were treated as they were protesting the Nicole Hannah-Smith Jones. So it's a lot going on.
Yeah, not everybody agrees with what Nicole Hannah-Jones has written, the 1619 Project about slavery and all, but this is really not about that. I guess this is really the larger issue is another large issue is, should donors be, interfering in what essentially are academic decisions? This was a decision essentially made initially by the journalism department at UNC to offer tenure, and then a big donor to the journalism department got involved, and suddenly tenure disappeared, and then it came back. It's a lot of moving pieces in this puzzle, and none of it makes the university look good right now. And I guess when UNC looks bad as a university, we kind of look bad as a state as well. So it's a tough black eye to overcome, and it's going to take some time and some effort on UNC's part to do just that. Down in Rock Hill, we had the release of some body cam video and the firing of a police officer, the charging of a police officer, and maybe the most interesting thing, the apology from the police officer down in Rock Hill at the same press conference to the victim in this case, the person that he's alleged to have assaulted during an arrest. Mark, this is not your typical case like this, is it?
Haven't seen it before. Not roll out like this. And again, this was a case where police went to arrest a young man, and he got combative, and then his brother came in and tried to intervene, calm things down, just got involved. And then this other detective showed up, and he pulled up and saw what was going on, and he immediately went after the young man's brother, pushed him out of the way, pushed him to the ground, and in the end, that was the assault. That was what he's the guy who got fired. It wasn't the initial officers involved with the first brother. And he was the one who then, he's like the player who comes off the bench in a fight. And, he got up and apologized and said, I jumped to a conclusion when I got there. And I appreciate his candor, his honesty, and I think that kind of reaction by police has happened forever. They see this fellow officer who they perceive to be in danger, and they, get involved first and ask questions later. And so it was remarkable that the chief basically drew the line in the sand right there. And then, as you say, that officer got there and he said, look, I apologize. And the brother who he attacked was right there at the news conference as well. So I hope we all learn from that, right? He certainly said he learned, and I hope other officers and other people in the community learn that, A, it's possible to make mistakes, B, it's possible to own them, and maybe C, it's possible to forgive.
Yeah. It's been a couple of tough weeks down in Rock Hill because of this, and again, it is nice to see that it doesn't change what happened, but it does maybe change how both sides view each other going forward, in particular with police having stressful relations with a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of neighbors and a lot of communities these days. A couple of quick things really quickly. Ballantyne, Goodbye Golf Course, Hello Park. It's a private park, but that's kind of nice that they're opening up a large swath of land in an area that's been pretty much not open to the public in the past. A kind of partnership I guess we like to see going forward in places like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ballantyne reimagined. There's you can play sand. In those sand traps. Now kids can play in the sand, and those ponds are now fishing ponds, catch and release, and things like that. And you can walk, and there will be festivals and farmers market and things like that. And I guess the response is well. I guess we talked to the owner of Northwood office. They are the owners of that. We talked to a public relations person representing them. And when they had an event, like 5,000 people came out the first time, and then the second time that doubled when they had a function there on June 12th. So they want to make sure that it's urban and it's walkable, and that and that people can get more bang for their buck when they live outside of Charlotte. That they have some space, some green space where they can walk and have and just have a good time, and it can be more inclusive instead of exclusive, because you had to, not everybody plays golf, so therefore open it up so everybody can walk and everybody can, just ride a bike.
Well, we're out of time, but that sounds like a good idea. Let's go right now. Hey, everybody, thank you for joining us this week. Always a good discussion. And thank you for joining us at home as well. And we'll see you next time right here on Off the Record.
A production of PBS Charlotte.